You've spelunked into the Matt Cave.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. I almost didn't this week. I had back spasms for the first time in my life. And, whoo boy, if you've never had back spasms, I hope you never have to experience them. Because yesterday I was, and I'm not that old, okay? I'm not. I'm 34, all right? 34 as of July 1st. Okay, I'm not that old. But I was bending over to pick up my laundry to do it, as one does on the weekend. And wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I was on my knees. I was afraid to move. Wow. So whenever I see an athlete on the injury report with back spasms, I now know, yeah, he's not playing. Because that's, woo. I didn't even get knocked to my knees when I had acute appendicitis. When I was a few hours away from my appendix bursting within my stomach. Or my abdomen. I wasn't knocked to my knees on that. I was doubled over, but I could still walk. Oh, man, that was quite the day yesterday. But then I went to the Instacare, and no worries, it was just back spasms, no structural damage, not even any need for an x-ray. They gave me what they gave me and sent me on my merry way. And I'm here. So let's do it. Let's see how far I can go today. Woo. As always, thank you for being here. I'd say that every week, and I truly mean it. You can follow me on social media. On X, that is at the Matt Cave Pod. On Facebook, the Matt Cave Podcast. You can also follow my YouTube channel where this lovely podcast is uploaded as well. The Matt Cave Podcast, all one word. And then I'm also on Twitch. I have not been streaming on Twitch because of my back and because I took a vacation last week. But that is twitch.tv/mattscave, MATTSCAVE. I stream there every weeknight from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Sometimes later, sometimes I cut off a little sooner, depending on how I feel. But yeah, those are the socials. And then please rate, review, like, subscribe, comment, wherever it is, however you listen. Helps spread the good word and get as many spelunkers in here as we can. Because as you know, I would love to do this every day. I would love nothing more than to be able to do this every day. So please help me achieve that dream. Okay, let's dive into it. Let's start with the early game, actually. Let's start with Utah at Colorado. And honestly, Utah performed a lot better than I thought they did, which is a weird thing to say when you give up 49 points. But through 3 quarters, it was actually pretty close. It was 28-16, so a 2-score game. Utah could have done it, but you had Isaac Wilson, who is a true freshman, and he's going to do true freshman things. There should never be an expectation that a true freshman can come in and save your season. I don't know why Kyle Whittingham and company thought that was a good idea, but they did. And that's partially why this season is the way it is, right? So we look at the season as a microcosm of injuries, just like last season for the Utes. Too many injuries, not enough depth, which is always going to be a problem in this new era of college football. Depth just doesn't exist. People want to play, and so they leave because they get offered to go play someplace else, or they get offered more money to go play someplace else. That's just the way it is. That's the market. So that's what's happened to Utah. They just cannot get out of their own way. With turnovers, missed tackles, and then an offensive staff that has no idea what they're doing. I mean, they have less of an idea of what they're doing than BYU's offensive staff. Don't worry, Cougar fans, I'm getting into that, and there will be a mini rant when it comes to that. So when you look at the game, through 3 quarters, it was actually pretty close. I was impressed. But then Isaac Wilson did Isaac Wilson things, and Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are in the Heisman conversation for a reason, and they kind of proved that out. This is the most points the Utes have given up all season, 49. That should be the most they give up all season. They won't face talents like these two guys in their last 2 games. They just won't. So hopefully Utah can get 2 wins against Iowa State and Central Florida. Iowa State's season has kind of gone off the rails a little bit. They need a lot of help to get into the Big 12 title game. And then Central Florida has fired their offensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator. And their offensive coordinator might not be too far behind. And I can see a way for Utah to get to bowl eligibility, which in and of itself would be a masterful performance from Kyle Whittingham. I know this hasn't been the year Utah or Utah fans expected. I know this was not the year I expected from Utah. But if they could still salvage a bowl game after this just morass of a year, then I think it should be labeled a success. And as the game went along, I know Isaac Wilson was making mistakes, but he was getting more and more comfortable with the offense. And I feel like Mike Bajagian got more comfortable calling plays for Isaac Wilson. So I think that's going to benefit them these last 2 weeks, because now they kind of know what Isaac Wilson's comfortable with. Whereas before, Andy Ludwig was trying to place that square peg in a triangle hole, and it just wouldn't work. And so that's what happened. And now I feel like they've kind of got an idea, even without all of those weapons, without Brant Keithy, Money Parks, the transfers of Micah Pittman. Man, that was a bad pick for me to watch out for this year, wasn't it? And then Jalen Glover as well transferring. They still have a good chance to get to a bowl game, because these last 2 weeks are not necessarily performances that need to be perfect because of the way I outlined it. So, yeah. All right, so that's the Utah season in a microcosm. The defense is still elite, even though they gave up 49 points. They are still outstanding. It's just they ran into 2 talents that are definitely going to the NFL in the first round, possibly one right after the other. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. All right, let's move on to Utah State. Just for a quick second, Utah State, 55 points against Hawaii. Hawaii at the time was actually playing to become bowl eligible. They needed to win out, but they were almost bowl eligible. So it was an important game for them, and Utah State just blew their doors off. And this offense that Utah State hasn't ever really been the problem. It's their defense just not being able to stop anything. And so Utah State gets a huge win at home, 55-10. Congrats to the Aggies there. All right, now let's turn to the debacle, the late night game that I am sick and tired of watching. I am so tired of watching BYU or Utah at 8:15 or 8:30 or whatever it is at night in these games. I am so tired of it. ESPN, we are not the Pacific time zone. I'm going to keep beating that drum. We're the Mountain time zone. We're an hour before the Pacific time zone. So give me a break, man. All right, now let's talk about the game itself. It started off inauspiciously. The Kansas offense basically just ran down the throat of BYU. It was a replay of last year, and they went down and they scored a touchdown rather easily, in all things considered. Then BYU came back, they drove down, they got a field goal in the red zone. Not good. You don't do that. That's not a thing. And so they kicked the ball back. The defense did its job. The defense only gave up 10 points the rest of the game. In total, the defense gave up 17. You would think a team that is ranked 6th in the country would be able to score more than 17 points at home. Not the case when Aaron Roderick and Jake Retzlaff are in charge. So Jake Retzlaff could have done the 2-for-1 special, right? Where you get the ball back 2 minutes to go in the first half, you go down, you score points. Doesn't have to be a touchdown, but points, because you get the ball to start the second half, right? Well, in Jake Retzlaff's infinite wisdom, and something he is not good at and needs to spend more time practicing, is throwing a post fade to the back pylon of the end zone. The past 3 games, they've been broken up or intercepted. He's terrible at it. So I hope he enjoyed his whirlwind tour in the media. He needs to get on the practice field and practice that throw until he has nightmares about it, because that was ridiculously bad. They were going to score. BYU was going to score. Instead of handing the ball off to LJ Martin to the left, where they were winning in the trenches there for him to get some yards, he decided he's just going to pull it back and throw it to Taase, who is the third-string tight end, and has no leaping ability whatsoever against a cornerback that is a potential All-American, is definitely Big 12, and it was an interception. BYU then comes out of the second half gangbusters, like 17-play drive to get down into the red zone. What happens? They mismanage the clock again. That is something that Kalani Sitake is always going to be doing because that is something that he has always done. He cannot manage a clock to save his life. And then Aaron Roderick couldn't get a play down in time for it either. I cannot stand Aaron Roderick. I'm sorry. You've heard me for the last 4 years say that Aaron Roderick is overrated. He's too smart for the rest of us, and so that's why he calls the game the way he does. This game and the game against Utah proves that he cannot call a game in a high-pressure situation. He can't. He buckles under the pressure. He's afraid. He cannot make the right call. He puts his players at disadvantages because he doesn't want to look stupid, or he wants to prove that he's smarter than everybody else. Like that final drive of the game, they were down in the red zone, 3 straight runs, and then on the third run, of those 3 straight runs, it's a speed option towards the boundary. He cut the field into a third, and he ran a speed option to that side. What? That's one of the dumbest calls I think I've ever seen. And then a false start penalty against Connor Pay, who is supposed to be a captain, supposed to be ready for the NFL, and he can't snap the ball? So that's 5 yards. So instead of 4th and 6, it's 4th and 11. And then in a flashback to the Coastal Carolina game in 2020, when, by the way, Kalani Sitake and BYU were trying to go 10-0, it was the exact same route that Dax Milne ran, right? Where it was an in route from the left side of the field, and it wasn't run deep enough. And so the ball gets to the receiver. There's 3 defenders right there to stop him. And so game over, right? So what I looked at in this game, trying to remove my fan goggles from last week and just analyze the game as it went. The defense played miraculously. Yeah, they had that one gaffe on the pooch punt from the quarterback, Jalen Daniels, not Jaden. Jaden is in the NFL. Jalen, no relation, is the quarterback for Kansas. Pooch punt, hit the kid in the helmet. I don't know why the defensive coordinator or the position coach or the captains on the field did not warn him about this, but they didn't. And so it hits him off the helmet. Jacob Robinson was there. He was the man in the spot. Unfortunately, the football is an oblong sphere, and so it bounced out from under him, and Kansas recovers. That was like the one gaffe BYU's defense had. And unfortunately, in a high-pressure situation, they needed to play perfectly because Aaron Roderick cannot call a game in a high-pressure situation. He wants to prove he's smarter than everybody else, or he's just too scared. So that's kind of what happened in this game. And what happened to Darius Lassiter? After that first drive, Jake Retzlaff didn't even look at him the rest of the game. He went to Chase Roberts, Keelan Marion, even to Mata'ava Ta'ase, which I already told you about that one. Even Reiner Swanson he went to, the true freshman tight end. My goodness. Darius Lassiter is your second best player on offense behind Chase Roberts. He should have as many catches as Chase Roberts. The past 2 games, he's kind of gone away from him. What's going on there? I saw a lot of Jake Retzlaff in the media the past 2 weeks. A lot of doing interviews about the BYU Jew, and then just talking about all of that, which is important. Don't get me wrong. It's really cool. He's the first Jewish athlete to start at BYU. Very cool. I am not taking anything away from that. But when you get somebody who's not used to that kind of attention, doing all these interviews on ESPN, even local interviews all over the place, that takes focus away from the game. He's there to play the game. He's not there to sell tickets. He's there to play the game and win games. And he hasn't done that, really. So I'm not going to unretire the nickname. I'm not even going to utter it. But it reared its ugly head against Kansas, and it cost BYU. It did. BYU's defense played the game they needed to play. 17 points at home. You're supposed to win that game 10 out of 10 times. But BYU cannot score in the red zone. They couldn't score in the red zone against Utah. They couldn't score in the red zone against Central Florida. So this has been a trend the past few weeks, and that's probably why the odds were set the way they were set the past few games for BYU, is because the odds makers in Vegas saw that trend, and they went, yeah, this winning streak is going to end sometime soon. I thought it was going to end against Arizona State. I was wrong. It happened at home against Kansas. So they've got a lot to work on this week, and I don't know if they'll be able to do it against an Arizona State team that is on fire. They are on fuego. It will be on ESPN at 1:30 p.m. Thank the stars above. And we'll see what happens. I think the defense is up to the task against Cam Scadaboo, the starlet for Arizona State, who I think has neurological problems, because just watch the game on Saturday, folks, and you tell me. You tell me. But that's going to be a very interesting game, because Arizona State has beaten pretty much everybody. After they beat Utah, they went on this tear. So a very, very hot Arizona State team looking to get into the Big 12 championship game. BYU is looking to stay alive in the Big 12 championship game race, which, by the way, don't get any of this wrong. Don't get any of this twisted, okay? BYU, after 10 weeks, 10 games played, is sitting at 9-1, guys. 9-1. You say that to any BYU fan before this season, they would have looked at you like your head was on backwards. This is an amazing season for BYU. They stumbled against a Kansas team that is fighting for bowl eligibility and is not having the season they expected. They had the same expectations as Utah did heading into the season with the quarterback and running back they have, and now they've kind of hit their stride. Not really against BYU, because they only put up 17 points, and it took a very lucky bounce of the football to get to 17, but that's kind of what happened with Kansas too. So moving forward, BYU, win and you're in. That's what it is. It's what it's been for a while. Win and you're in the college football playoff. But there are 2 of the 3 remaining games, if they make the Big 12 championship, that are going to be very dicey. Starting with this week against Arizona State in Tempe, and then in the Big 12 championship game against Colorado. That's going to be what it is. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because BYU is not getting an at-large bid. I think that is what the playoff committee was signaling to BYU and the Big 12. Like, look, we're going to rank them up here, but if they slip at all and somebody else beats them in the Big 12 championship game, they're not getting in. They're going to be one of the first 4 teams out. And that's probably what's going to happen if BYU doesn't take care of business. Do I have confidence in the defense to be able to slow down Cam Scadaboo and then slow down the Houston Cougars? Absolutely. Do I have that confidence against Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter? No, I don't. We'll see what happens with the offense. Aaron Roderick, he's not a big-time offensive coordinator. He could coordinate for an independent team or a group of 5 conference school and look fantastic. Once he hits the big time, though, he's not a big-time offensive coordinator. He's just not. And these last 2 weeks kind of prove that out, because his offense the past 2 weeks combined to score 25 points. 25. I don't count kick return touchdowns or punt return touchdowns for the offense. That's a special teams play. So that's where we're at. And, Kalani Sitake is loyal to a fault, as we all saw with Ilaisa Tuiaki. It took Tuiaki stepping down on his own for Kalani Sitake to make the change to Jay Hill, which was a masterful change, by the way. Jay Hill is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, up there with Morgan Scalley. But I don't know with the offense. I don't know. Jake Retzlaff kind of turned into what I was expecting at the start of the year these past 3 weeks, and I don't see it getting better. I think it's only going to get worse, because he's going to start pressing now, right? And that gunslinger mentality everybody praises him for, once things start to go sour, they get worse because they press. They think, oh, well, I need to do better. I need to put it in a better spot. Not necessarily, Jake. Your offensive coordinator needs to put you in a better spot to succeed. And if he's not doing that, it's a little bit your fault, but it's all his fault. And that's kind of where we're at right now, especially with these last 2 weeks, the clock mismanagement. I don't really put that on Kalani Sitake. I put it on Aaron Roderick for not making a decision fast enough, for not saying, yeah, we're going for it, we have a play. He waits 20 seconds on the play clock, and then he says, I think we can go for it. And then Kalani Sitake and the team They have 22 players on the field because they've got the special teams kicking unit ready to go. They have the offense on the field, and so it's a mad scramble dash to try to get in position, and so it's like 3 seconds when they're finally set, and so Kalani Sitake has to burn a timeout, which, by the way, if Sitake had all 3 timeouts at the end of the game there, they would have forced a punt, and that punt would have been in the end zone for Kansas. I'm not saying BYU would have made something happen, but it would have been a better chance than what happened at the end there. So, there you go. That was the game. It's not a good signal for what's to come. All right, let's move it on along to the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are performing as they should be performing. They upset the Mavericks. They also upset the Spurs, which I was not expecting. I don't want them to do that. I want them to beat teams like Portland, sure. Beat teams like Washington Wizards or the Detroit Pistons, yeah. But not teams that are expected to get to the NBA Finals like the Mavericks or to make a playoff run like the Spurs. I don't want to see that. I want to see them keep it close like they did against the Kings and the Suns so that the young guns can play in high-pressure situations, game-clinching situations, yes, but then lose the game so that the Jazz can get Cooper Flag. That's the goal for the season. 1, 2, 3 Cancun is the rallying cry for this team. It needs to be. John Collins is showing that he does still have enough in the tank. I don't know if he's part of the future for the Jazz because if they get Cooper Flag, that is a very crowded front court. And so maybe we'll see him move around the deadline with John Collins. I do not want to see them move Jordan Clarkson at all. I said this a few weeks ago, and I'll continue saying it. Jordan Clarkson loves it here in Utah. He loves the fans, and vice versa. Keep him. Just keep him. He's too important. Unless it's an offer you can't refuse, like a couple of first-round picks, keep Jordan Clarkson, for sure. All right, so that's kind of it for the Jazz. There's not much to report on this year. Kyle Filipowski is doing very well, as is Cody Williams. And then Isaiah Collier is showing flashes already this early in the season. We are 12 games into the season. We got 70 more to go, so it'll be a long slog. All right, let's move it on to the Utah Hockey Club. The Utah Hockey Club, and one of the worst jersey launches or product launches, whatever you want to call it, I think I've ever seen, and I worked at GameStop. Okay? I know what a bad product launch looks like, and this is one of them. So the jerseys launched this past Friday before the game against Vegas, and at like 9 a.m., there was a line 300 people deep. It took them 3.5 hours to get into the store, and by the time the 200 and something person got in, they were sold out. Then I was seeing pictures online of the quality of those jerseys, and they were pretty poor. Not gonna lie. The stitching was not correct. The numbers were already peeling off on a couple of them, and they had proof. They had receipts of the Utah Hockey Club store next to these pictures of these jerseys already falling apart. It's not a good look for Fanatics, that's for sure. And if I'm Ryan Smith, I'm on the horn with everybody possible saying this was unacceptable. What are you doing to us? Obviously, there's an appetite for this here. Why are you doing this to us? Because those jerseys sold out. They sold out on Fanatics as well. I was lucky enough to be able to get in and get one. I have no idea if it's the right size for me, though. It might be too small or it might be way too big. I don't know. But at least I got a Clayton Keller jersey. But if you ordered one from Fanatics.com or from the NHL.com club store, the jerseys will not have the inaugural patch sewn on. They said they will be selling those later down the road so that you can add them yourselves, which I think is just money grubbing to the nth degree and stupid, and I hate it. But that's what's happening. Even the ones on Fanatics sold out, though. And they said they're going to get another drop, air quotes, soon. Whatever that means. So we'll see what happens there. They were leading the Golden Knights into the third period 2-1. It was looking okay, but then the defense collapsed again because, well, they only have like 2 good defenders on the team currently that are healthy. And that showed. And that's going to continue to show until they can get that blue line either fixed or get those guys back. Because in the win against Calgary, That was crazy. The goalkeeper, or no, it wasn't Calgary. Excuse me. It was Carolina. It was one of those C teams. Vejmelka faced 50 shots, 5-0. Not 15, 50. 5-0 shots. He only let one in against a Stanley Cup contending team. So Vejmelka showed what he could do. He definitely did. I don't know how many of those shots Connor Ingram would have saved, but that's another early season pick that is, not great right now. Right now, it could change. Hockey is a long season, just like the NBA. It's 82 games. We are 16 games into the season. We got, how many is that? 66 games to go. So we'll see what happens the rest of the year, but I am very unimpressed with Fanatics and very let down by what they did with this jersey drop because everybody was looking forward to this. And then I saw pictures of so many people wrapped around the Delta Center like 3 times trying to get into that store. And then like 3 hours after the store opened, it was sold out. That's not okay. It's really not. So it's a learning opportunity for Ryan Smith. It's a learning opportunity for Fanatics for thinking that the Utah market is some sort of podunk backwoods thing that nobody cares about sports. Wrong. And I would think they would know better, right? The co-owner of Real Salt Lake is the owner of Fanatics. Or was at one point. You would think they know better, but I guess not. My goodness. All right, that's the show this week, everybody. I'm glad I was able to make it with my back. It did not seize up on me. There were no edits there, so yay. I will see you all next week after BYU either fumbles away their season or continues their run. And hopefully Utah can continue their march towards bowl eligibility against a weak schedule. Iowa State and Central Florida are not that good. And, well, hopefully the Jazz keep losing and the Utah Hockey Club can figure out their blue line because right now it's terrible. Other than Sergachev, they've got nobody. I'll see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.